Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here and you've recently been laid off, let me just say at the top of the video, I am so sorry, and layoffs suck. And I've definitely been there before. Back in 2019, when I was laid off from my first product marketing role, I wondered if I had missed some warning signs, and I really wish that I had known ahead of time if it was possible that a layoff was coming. So in today's video, I'm going to go over the top warning signs that your company could be considering a layoff in the near future. And if you're new here, just a quick intro. My name is Natalie, and I'm a senior product marketer with 10 years of experience in the tech industry, and I've gone on to lead product launches that have led to $202,000 in 30 days in revenue and $1.8 million in 7 months. And newsflash, I've been laid off too. So if you're looking to break into product marketing, or you just like learning about tech or product marketing, please feel free to like and subscribe this video. It would help me out a lot. Okay, let's dive into it. Okay, so one of the clearest signs that a company might be considering a layoff is the communication, or rather the lack of communication from your leadership. So this means one, decreased transparency. If regular team meetings or company-wide kind of all hands on deck meetings are getting canceled last minute, it's usually a sign that maybe there might not be such great news to deliver. And so it's not necessarily a silver bullet that if your company is canceling all hands or your team meetings that it's going to be a layoff brewing, but it's certainly something to look out for, and certainly could be an indicator that a layoff could be coming. Number two in this category of kind of lack of communication is really vague messaging. So especially if a company is not really telling the full story, they're not going to be fully transparent, and they're going to give you some kind of vague messaging on all hands calls or meetings. And it's going to sound maybe a little optimistic, but not very specific. It could be a sign that the company is going through a very hard time. That's another thing that I've heard before, a difficult period. And so if you're seeing this kind of language or hearing this kind of language, then it could be a good indicator of a potential layoff coming. And another sign in terms of communication, the lack thereof, that could lead to a layoff is leadership avoidance. If managers or leadership become all of a sudden really inaccessible, this could be a sign that they don't want to have these tough conversations with people that are their direct reports. And I personally went through this back in 2019 when I got let go. So all of those meetings, those one-on-one meetings with my manager, where we're supposed to be talking about my career development, I'm supposed to be getting feedback on these projects that I've been working on and putting my life and blood into these projects, just for her to cancel on me all the time and also be extremely passive aggressive. But that's another topic for another day. Okay, up next is the more obvious signs of a potential layoff, which is money signals. Budget cuts in other areas besides headcount can start to pop up as you're getting closer and closer to a layoff or a potential layoff. A common sign that I've seen time and time again is an all of a sudden hiring freeze. So it could be so difficult to get permission to add headcount to your current team, and you get so excited because you're going to be spreading all this work to a new person. You're finally going to be able to have a little bit more work-life balance, and then all of a sudden you get to the offer stage sometimes, which could be horrible for the candidate and horrible for people that interviewed the candidate, and then we're in a hiring freeze. So if your company has all of a sudden gone through a hiring freeze and is not backfilling positions of people who have left the company, then that could be an indication that there's budget cuts coming. Travel and general expenses is another really common one that you start to see as companies consider scrutinizing every single dollar to save, and they're usually preparing for a bigger budget cut, such as layoffs, when they start to look at every single thing. If you're traveling, or they just cancel these trips to get together, whether it's a sales kickoff or a customer user conference, whatever it is, if you start to see these events go away, that could be also an indication that a layoff might be coming. Next is canceled projects. So if you start to notice that projects that were really big initiatives have suddenly scaled back and leadership is putting a pause on them, it could be because they're considering workforce reductions. And as I said earlier, when I was talking about my manager canceling my one-on-one meetings, this hurt me so bad in 2019 because I had put my heart and soul into this project to generate really good leads and hopefully revenue from LinkedIn ad copy that I created. And I did it by buyer persona. I did this whole strategy, and then I was going to have a meeting with my manager to get her advice get her take. We're almost at the end of the project, and then it was suddenly scaled back. That really hurt. And sometimes the signs are a little bit closer to home, which is right on your team. So a big sign that I personally experienced was all of a sudden team restructuring. So has your team currently restructured or been moved around or merged with another team? This could be an indication of a upcoming workforce reduction. And so back in 2019, I have personal experience with this. I was hired in my first product marketing role, and I was doing competitive intelligence. I was doing my first product launch. I was really enjoying the work that I was doing in product marketing. But all of a sudden, and towards the end of my tenure at that company, I was moved into a demand gen role, which, no offense, I mean, demand gen is amazing, and these are the marketers that people outside of tech or outside of marketing think all marketers focus on. They're the ones that will update review sites. They're the ones that will focus on ads and the copy in ads, talk about social media strategy, etc. This is all to generate demand, which is why it's called demand generation, to drive revenue and get leads that end up converting to opportunities and revenue for the company. And I understand and love my demand gen partners, but I am not a demand gen marketer. I am a product marketer. And so I noticed that I was taking on these projects that had very, very little impact. And then when I would try to get some insight from my manager or some advice, again, she was nowhere to be found, or she would cancel my meetings really last minute. And I really just felt like there was no sense of direction. So I was talking to one of the other product marketers who was still on the product marketing team, and I was just kind of telling her about this reshuffling and how I felt really confused by it. And she told me, run for the hills, that it had happened to her at a previous company where they were putting her in these random roles. And really it was because she was a high performer and they didn't want to lose her, but they knew that a workforce reduction was coming. And so they put her into these random roles where they could keep her doing something, being active, but not in the department that they plan to let go. So because she had told me that, and I really appreciated that she had given me that advice, I started applying for jobs right away in product marketing externally. So I spent the next few months getting warmed up, as I say, in my interviewing skills and in my interviews that I took. And so by the time the official layoff did come, I was already on final round interviews with companies. So I highly recommend that if you're seeing some of these signs, and you also just kind of have a gut feeling that your company might be thinking about a workforce reduction or a layoff, and some of these signs are piling up and ringing a bell to you, I highly recommend that you spruce up your resume and you go ahead and start applying for jobs. And another sign is increased workload, which makes a lot of sense considering the other warning signs we've talked about, such as not backfilling those who have left the company. So if you've noticed that all of a sudden you have a ton of work on your plate, or your team is just getting inundated with work and projects, especially again from people who those were the projects that they were on when they were at the company and they're no longer here and they're not hiring to replace that person, this is a very big indicator that a layoff could be coming. And back to my earlier point that I just mentioned, like a really big indicator that a layoff could be coming is just overall morale drops. If you notice around the office, if you're in the office, people just seem kind of down. It feels like there's kind of a lull happening. This has happened many, many times in my experience. I worked for a company that basically laid off a big chunk of people every quarter. So every 3 months they were laying off people, and there was definitely a sense of like a slowdown that felt really unnatural. We were going really hard at first. We were doing these big high impact projects, and then all of a sudden everything was just quiet. So if you notice that quiet, and when you ask questions about the future, when you ask about your goals, maybe you have OKRs, so maybe you have objectives and key results that you're measured on, and you're saying, hey, like you're talking to your boss and saying, what are we working on in the next couple quarters? Like what are the launches that are coming or the releases? And there seems to be kind of this, like, again, vague messaging around the future that could be a sign that a layoff is coming. And taking a bit of a step back, we can look at external factors as well that might play a role in an impending workforce reduction. So one of the things that you can look at is just your overall industry. Is your industry going through a lot of challenges? It's not just your company, but maybe your competitors and just the industry as a whole is having a hard time time driving sales. If you're noticing that the industry as a whole in different media reports or whatever, then there might be an impending workforce reduction because it just seems like the market is having a hard time and maybe there isn't a product market fit or it's just a bad time for your customers. And lastly, if you work for a public company, a good indicator that is not so great of an impending layoff could be your stock performance. So if you're seeing your stock performance gradually keep going down, then that could be a likely cause for workforce reduction in the future. So what can you do if you spot these signs? What if you're thinking to yourself as you're watching this video, wow, that sounds like what my company is currently going through? Then I have some quick tips. I did cover a lot of what you can do to help yourself after a layoff and how you can, while you're employed, kind of future-proof your career so that you don't get laid off in the future or you have the best chance of not getting laid off. So if you haven't checked out that video, please check it out. It's right here. I'm going to link it up on the top of this video so you can click in. But I'm going to leave you with a couple pieces of advice that I'll give you if you're seeing some of the warning signs that I didn't cover in that video. Now, a big one is I highly recommend that you start networking actively. Attend industry events, attend product marketing events if you're looking to break into a product marketing role or you are in product marketing, and really connect with your old colleagues that you enjoyed working with. Start asking for recommendations on LinkedIn and say that, hey, if you give me a recommendation, I'll give you a recommendation. It tends to go a long way and tends to work out pretty well. And so I think that this is a really important one because I can't tell you how many bad managers that I've had, and your life is horrible if you have an insecure and or bad manager. And so I know the people who are in higher up positions that I've thoroughly enjoyed working for. Our working styles, our communications seem to be in sync and complement one another. So I keep those people in my network. Oftentimes they'll reach out to me if they're hiring on their team, but I'll sometimes reach out to them and just ask, hey, I'm thinking about making a career move. Like, is there any chance that there's an opening on your team? So just make sure that you're keeping kind of a tally of those folks that you thoroughly enjoyed working with, whether they be on different teams or direct, managers that you would be reporting to. Just kind of keep a log, whether it's in the back of your mind or on a piece of paper, and just remember those folks, reach out to them when, these warning signs might be coming up. And the next one, okay, I lied. I did cover this in my last video, but the next one is about saving money. So just be, reasonable with yourself. I kind of talk about that as well. You don't need to cut off literally everything and just be miserable. That cup of coffee from Starbucks every now and then is not going to make or break you. But I do recommend that you start to be more conscientious of your spending habits, considering that you might be on a limited budget and income should a potential layoff happen. And lastly, I know this is really hard, but try to stay positive. I know what it's like to be laid off and be going to interviews and feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to be this really confident, really happy, excited person, and I'm so depressed because I just want a job. I totally have been there before. I've been in your shoes. Just really try to give yourself all the tools that you can to stay positive. So I would even start doing a meditation practice. That's what I would do before my interviews, just to feel really clear. And sometimes I would do workouts or I'd go on a walk. Just really try to take care of yourself and also stay positive, because this is a temporary situation and it doesn't reflect on your competency in your role. And there you have it. I hope that this video was helpful in understanding and seeing the potential signs of an upcoming layoff. And don't fret if your company is showing some of these signs, it's okay. Just be proactive in protecting yourself and hopefully you'll make it through the layoff. But if not, you have a really good game plan for getting back out there and landing another role. And if you're open to it, I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you want to book time on my Calendly, it's in the description on this video. But I'm just trying to understand what PMM hopefuls, so what people that are trying to break into product marketing, are going through right now in the job market. I know the job market is really tough. So I'm looking to understand, what's been going well, how are interviews, what are you being asked to do, just kind of understanding some of your challenges, because I'm trying to think of a way that I could potentially help those out there. So this isn't a sales call, it's not free coaching, but it's just for research-based purposes. So if you're open to it and you're willing to be vulnerable with me, then please book some time with me. I would really appreciate it. Alrighty, well, thanks so much for watching and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.